This is OwlUp, where learning happens in minutes, not hours. For a deeper journey, explore all our courses at owlup.co. Now, let's dive in. Chapter 1 of the Philosophy of Happiness, What 2,500 Years of Thinking Tells Us, Aristotle and the Good Life. In this chapter, you'll learn: identify Aristotle's concept of eudaimonia. Let's dive in. Happiness, Aristotle claimed, is an activity, not a mood, not a lucky break, something you do. Picture two people with similar jobs, incomes, and health. One feels strangely empty, the other quietly fulfilled. Same circumstances, different daily habits of the soul. Aristotle thinks the gap between those two lives isn't mysterious at all. It comes down to excellence in how you live, repeatedly, over time. He calls this excellence virtue, and it isn't about being unrealistically pure or nice. It's about skillfully hitting the right note in situations that pull you toward extremes: fear and recklessness, stinginess and waste, passivity and aggression. Crucially, this isn't something you either have or don't have. For Aristotle, you build it the way a musician builds mastery, by practicing small, deliberate choices until they become second nature. And you don't practice alone. Your character is shaped in families, teams, cities, anywhere your actions affect others. So in a world obsessed with hacks and shortcuts, Aristotle invites a harder, deeper question. What kind of person are your routines slowly turning you into? Aristotle sharpens the point. A good life isn't just inner peace, it's a pattern of rational choices stretched across a whole lifetime. That means three demanding questions. Are your decisions guided by clear thinking or by impulse and algorithmic nudges? Are you reliably steering between harmful extremes, especially when stressed or watched by others? And are you using your best hours on tasks that genuinely deserve contemplation? Already in antiquity, he warns that comfort, status, or even talent can't substitute for this. Tools and luck help, but your steady way of choosing is what ultimately rules. Aristotle now ups the difficulty. It isn't enough to act nicely in a vague way. He thinks human flourishing has a structure, almost like a well-designed product. Three layers matter. First, the moral layer, the familiar qualities we see in coworkers and friends. Courage in hard meetings. Generosity with time or credit. Honesty when a small lie would be easier. Aristotle famously maps these as means between destructive extremes. Courage between cowardice and rashness. Generosity between stinginess and waste. Truthfulness between boasting and self-erasure. But the point isn't to split the difference mechanically. It's to land on what's fitting in this situation for these people with these stakes. That's where the second layer comes in. Practical wisdom, phronesis. This isn't raw IQ or a stack of degrees. It's the hard-won ability to read a room, weigh trade-offs, and decide what matters now. A leader who knows when to delay a feature for safety, a friend who senses when advice will help and when it will wound, these are phronesis in action. Aristotle insists that without this, the moral qualities misfire. You might be brave at the wrong time, generous in ways that harm. The third layer is intellectual virtue at its peak, deep understanding and contemplation. Here, Aristotle sounds almost alien to modern productivity culture. He thinks the highest use of our minds isn't endless problem-solving, but sustained attention to things worth knowing for their own sake: science, philosophy, art, the underlying patterns of the world. Not because these pay off instrumentally, but because exercising our best capacities on worthy objects is itself part of flourishing. Modern research keeps stumbling onto versions of this framework. Google's Project Aristotle found that the most effective teams weren't those with the highest combined IQ, but those with strong psychological safety. People felt free to speak, question, and admit mistakes. That's what environments rich in courage, honesty, and practical wisdom look like from the inside. Positive psychology's findings about deliberate virtue building and life satisfaction are, in a way, Aristotle with better data and fMRI machines. And he is blunt about luck. Health, relationships, basic security really do matter. They don't guarantee a fulfilling life, but their absence can crush even strong character. The hopeful twist is his insistence that, within the limits of our circumstances, how we train our attention and responses still carries surprising weight. A product manager facing a launch delay has 3 live options: ship a buggy feature to impress investors, bury the bad news to keep the team motivated, or own the delay, protect users, and explain the trade-offs clearly. The third path looks worse on this quarter's slide deck, but it quietly trains courage, truthfulness, and responsibility. Traits teammates start mirroring. Over a few cycles, you don't just hit targets, you change what people think is normal. Or take someone in mid-career burnout. Instead of quitting in a blaze of frustration, they run a different experiment. Decline one prestige project that clashes with their values, mentor a junior colleague, and set a hard boundary on weekend work. No life overhaul, just 3 sharper choices. 6 months later, the job is the same on paper, yet relationships, reputation, and self-respect feel surprisingly different. This is Aristotle's wager. You don't need perfect conditions, just enough stability to keep choosing slightly better actions until they choose you back. As cities start rating success by green space and mental health, not just GDP, Aristotle slips into urban planning meetings. Algorithms that once optimized for clicks may be asked to aim at long-term civic thriving, like rerouting traffic toward cleaner air rather than faster commutes. Schools could grade less on test scores and more on how well students collaborate across differences, treating each classroom like a small prototype of a healthier democracy. Aristotle would likely ask not, "Are you happy?" but "What are you aiming at today?" In a world of nudging algorithms and infinite feeds, that question gets sharper. Whose aims are you living by, your own or a platform's? Treat each notification, meeting, or scroll as a tiny vote for a future self. The pattern of those votes is where your life quietly turns. Before next week, ask yourself, in the last 24 hours, which activities actually felt worth doing for their own sake, not for money, status, or praise? And what does that reveal about what my good life might look like? If Aristotle says friendship of virtue is central to eudaimonia, which one friend actually challenges me to be better? And how could I spend one deeper, more intentional hour with them this week? Looking at my day, where do I mindlessly chase pleasure or distraction? Social media, snacking, busy work? And what small, specific swap could I make today that would move me 1 inch closer to living with more courage, temperance, or practical wisdom instead? This was OwlUp, your daily step forward. To keep learning with structured courses and more insights, go to owlup.co. Until tomorrow!